Hey guys, my name's Tyler. I'm the multimedia content producer from the University of Canberra. Now I understand that most people here probably don't have a DSLR. If you do, that's great. But most of these tips can be used for photography in general, so you can use your phone for all of these. And they're predominantly going to be compositional techniques. When I talk about composition, that is how you arrange and place your subjects within your frame. The rule of thirds is a very common and very popular compositional technique. It pretty much divides your frame up into a 3x3 grid. You'll notice on your phone and that you can actually bring up a 3x3 grid. This is what it's for. So to use the rule of thirds, you need to place your subject on either the vertical or the horizontal lines of the grid. You can also place them on the points of intersection. I use this for 95% of my photos. It's really handy. It really helps you with placing the subjects within your image. And the idea of it is that it creates balance within the photograph, and it also attracts the viewer's eye to the point of interest or subject. So just a few examples we have here. This coastal ocean shot. I place the horizon on the top horizontal line where about a third of the image is the sky and 2/3 is the water. I was actually trying to use 2 points of the rule of thirds grid here. I was using this rock in the front left of the foreground. Another example is when you're kind of taking portrait photography, having somebody in the image, it's a pretty good idea to line them up with one of the vertical lines. Yeah, so just have a play around, try placing subjects on different lines, vertical, horizontal, or the points of intersection, and you get some really great images. Leading line is another compositional technique, and it naturally leads the viewer's eyes from one point of the photograph to another. So I'll give you a few examples here that will kind of make it a bit more obvious what I'm talking about. So this first one here, you can see my partner, she's standing in the middle of this walkway, and the railings, they kind of converge towards her. Your eyes will follow those railings, and so they've kind of guided you to her as the subject. And another example is my partner holding these birds here at the aviary. Although not as obvious, her arm acts as the leading line, so you lead down her arm and you'll end up looking at her face. Or the opposite way around, you look at her face first because that's where the focus is, and you look down her arm into the foreground and see the bird. It's just a way of guiding your attention to different portions of the photograph. So when I'm talking about foreground, I'm talking about the elements that are closest to the camera. And then background are the elements that are the furthest away, and then middle ground falls right between them. What the use of foreground, middle ground, and background can do is create depth in your photograph. That's one of the challenges with photos, is that you lose that three-dimensional space because it's 2D, and adding in these elements of depth kind of give it that 3D illusion. Foreground, background, and middle ground can also contextualize the subject within their environment, kind of give you a reference of their size in relation to what's around them and where they fall within that environment. Another thing I like to do a lot in my photos is framing. And that's when you use that foreground and that blur to create a frame around the subject, and it draws your eyes towards that subject. For example, here we've got this swan on its nest, and you can see all the kind of reeds or plants around it, and I've framed it so nothing that's blurry in the foreground blocks its face, and because you've got that little frame, that little gap, your eye's instantly attracted towards that swan. So next time you take the photo, see if you can think beyond the subject itself, see how you can kind of incorporate that foreground and background. What you do as a beginner is you generally find your subject and you'll just stand right there, bring your camera up to your eye and take a photo just at your standing height. But as soon as you change that, as soon as you get on level with the subject or get really high above it and get a high angle, or get really low and get a low angle, you're changing how we see that subject. These angles can kind of give a bit of a psychological effect as well. If you have a high angle, it can kind of make you feel like you're looking over everything, make everything look small, show how it fits in the environment. When you have a low angle and you're looking up, it kind of makes the subject look like to have a lot of power, or it can kind of enhance how we see the scale. It can make things look grander and bigger than they are. Don't be afraid to get really creative with your angles and camera height. You're going to get really interesting shots if you change how we perceive the things around us. Lighting is a huge topic, but it can make your images look great. I'm just going to give you a few tips involving kind of the use of ambient and natural light, because I'm not expecting you to have any gear like flashes. When I'm talking about ambient and natural light, it's just the light within the area you are. You'll find that a lot of the time it will be the sunlight. So portrait photos can look great when you get a soft, even light across the subject's face. You don't usually get that when you're standing out in sunlight, but if you can put the subject, say, in the shade under a tree, that creates even light across them, and it will make their skin look soft and flattering. An example here is my friend. We were kind of hidden under this concrete archway, and because we were out of that direct sunlight, he has this soft light coming from outside the archway and illuminates him really well and creates that soft light. Sometimes it's hard to avoid direct sunlight when you're shooting outside, but it can be really handy if you're shooting early in the morning or late in the afternoon, because the sun is a bit lower and you can use that sun angle to your advantage. If you want that soft, even light on your subject's face, you have to move them around so the sun is behind them. And this is called backlighting. It creates that kind of glow behind them. And it can also lead to some artifacts in the photo, such as a lens flare. I personally find that very interesting, and it makes the photo even more engaging and a bit unique rather than just having stock standard lighting. The main thing I'm just trying to say is try to get your subject to have soft, even lighting on their face, because it's going to look so much better. So put them in the shade, put the sun behind them, whatever you need to do to achieve that. Yeah, so those are my 5 tips for taking better photos. I hope they can help you out a little bit, and go on, get out there and take some photos.